Hi friends, it's Mari here and welcome back to my makerspace. I have a 12 by 12 scrapbooking project for you here today. And I'm just going to show you here that I have already typed out my journaling on my 12 by 12 white cardstock using my We Are Memory Keepers typewriter. I'm showing you here that my plan is to do kind of a horizontal layout, putting some mixed media horizontally through the middle of my paper. And the photo that I'm going to be using today is about 4 by 3. And my plan was to also create a little area to the lower left that also has a little bit of mixed media for a cluster down on that side too. And other than that, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with this layout. I decided to trim off the white border on my photo and take my little Stamping Up tool here that's part of this little collection of tools. I love this little set. And I'm going to use this little distressing tool to rough up the edges of my photo just to create a little bit of texture. There's going to be quite a bit of texture on my layout here today. And one of the ways that I wanted to achieve that was to rough up the edges of this picture. So I'm just going to do that here, sped this up so that it doesn't take quite as long for me to show you that. I'm also going to be using my Prima Finnabair clear or transparent gesso here to go right through the center of my layout. I'm going to just apply that with my palette knife, and that will protect my paper when I'm using my different products on here for mixed media. So now that's all dry, I've let that dry, and I'm going to use some magicals today from Lindy's Stamp Gang. I'm going to start off here with a color called Papa Pink. And I've just put that on a little bit of plastic to the side of my layout here. I'm going to add a little bit of water where I have that gesso on my paper. And I'm going to take my paintbrush here and start to just create a line where I want my mixed media to go. And I wanted the line to be sort of an odd shape, I guess, in a way. I wanted it to be skinny on both ends and then kind of get fat in sort of like to the middle and then over to the right end a little bit. Once I've got some of that color on there and some water, I just go directly with my magical shaker there and add it right onto my paper. And now I'm just adding some more water just to really make that magical have a little more depth with its color. And I'll just keep playing around with this, adding water, and so on, and adding another color. The other color that I'm going to add is called Grab a Guy Gold, and it's also a Lindy Stamp Gang magical shaker. And the palette color, or the color palette, I should say, that I'm going for here today is some pinks, some oranges, yellows, and I'm going to be using Paige Evans' Truly Grateful collection, which has a lot of those tones in it. So this is a fall photograph that I'm scrapping here today. So it is really an autumn kind of Thanksgiving themed layout. So now as I'm adding that gold color and some more water, I'm just going to let that run a little bit. And soon I'm going to also think about bringing my heat tool in and drawing this and kind of trying to create some really interesting effects with these magicals. So I'm just going to continue moving them around. You'll just see me bringing that line down a little bit lower on the right side. And I wanted to make sure that the side where my photograph is going to go, which is more over to the right, because of where my journaling is, I wanted that section of the mixed media to be a little bit fatter or wider. Now, the trick here was to make sure that my mixed media doesn't run down onto my journaling, because the journaling is just in typewriter ink and I didn't want that to smear, get any water or anything on it. So I just wanted to be really careful with this and make sure that it didn't run down too far towards that journaling. So I just bring in my heat tool, and you can just see that I kind of let the water move around a little bit. I lift my paper and let it run. And in that way, what the magicals are going to do is just create these really cool zones of light and dark as this heat tool is helping them dry. And I really like how that creates a really interesting kind of bit of color on the layout. And yeah, it's going to just be sort of on that strip where I put that gesso before. So I like how that's looking so far. And I just really wanted it to be irregular and kind of distressed looking. This is going to be a fairly clean layout. But I wanted my mixed media to just sort of like be really cool and interesting looking. I wanted to cover up that journaling again here while I'm doing my splatters, just so that I didn't get any splatters over onto that ink again. So I'm just going to take my two different colors of magicals that I've used here. I'm going to water them down and use a smaller brush. This is the smallest brush from the Vicki Boutin mixed media brush set, and I'm going to just create some little splatters here with the brush in these two different colors. So that Papa pink and the Grab a Guy gold. Again, I'm just going to splatter below the mixed media area and above, and eventually I will splatter over in that left corner as well, where I'm going to put some of the other things there for that, for this layout. So yeah, you'll just see me here squeezing my brush out, just trying to get some splatters going here in a larger size. I do end up covering one of these up when I put my photo on there. You can imagine which one it is because you saw me kind of figure out where I wanted my photo to go, but that's okay. I'm not really too worried about it as long as I have a couple of those larger splatters showing and then the smaller splatters around. And I do end up adding some sequins and some little enamel dots later as well, so they'll all sort of blend in with those splatters. I'm just cleaning that up now. I'm going to get that out of the way, and I just want to make sure that I didn't have any rogue splatters on my table here that might get soaked into my layout. Getting that cleaned up and then just finishing the drying process here so that I can move on with embellishing my layout, getting my photo on there and all that good stuff. If you don't have a heat tool in your stash and you're looking for one, this little heat tool that I have here is actually the little Ranger Heat It craft tool, and it works really well for mixed media. I really like it. I don't use it in my card making process. I have a different heat tool for that that's kind of a little bit hotter than this one, but this does work really great for drying any of your liquids. I also really like it for drying pastes and those sorts of things as well. So I'm going to make sure that that's all dry here before I start moving on to the next step. This is roughly where I'm going to be putting my photo as I'm looking at it and moving it around a little bit and trying to decide. Basically, this is the photo area. And then I wanted to retain that area above the journaling for my title. Now I'm taking some, this really isn't, it's not tissue paper. It's a heavier paper than that. And it's in my stash. I just keep it almost like rolled up in a ball because I really like it to be crinkled like that. And I'm just taking that now. I'm going to use that as a layer behind my photo. And I also had a sheet of this paper from the most recent Amy Tangerine collection. I really love this black and white floral. I think it's really cool. And it's going to add a little pop of black on my layout in a few different areas. So I just wanted a tiny little strip of it on that left side of my photo. And I'm also going to put a torn piece of white cardstock on that left side of the photo as well. Now I'm going to layer these all up onto that side, and then I'm going to, once I get these all stuck together, I'm going to run that through my sewing machine and add a little bit of black stitching to that left side where those different layers are. So I'm going to add my photo to that not really transparent, but opaque paper there, the crinkly paper, with a little bit of foam adhesive just to lift that up a little bit and give it some dimension. I will add a little bit of adhesive here to the white cardstock and add that onto that left side. And then I will have a little bit of a transition here and you'll be able to see where I've added the stitching onto my photo. And I just really like how that stitching adds that little bit of detail. You can see that I've left some of the threads on the stitching there just to give it a little bit more texture as well. So I'm going to glue that black and white piece of floral paper onto that left side. Now I really wanted to add some of these Vicki Boutin stamped leaves onto my project as well. So Vicki recently came out with these really cool pigment inks, and I wanted to use this gold. So I stamped out those leaves onto a piece of white cardstock with this gold pigment ink. You can see how really pretty and shimmery it is. And I'm just going to fussy cut these out, leaving a tiny little white border. And I'm going to do that 3 different times to create 3 different little handmade embellishments for my layout today. So I hadn't really decided at this point where I wanted to put them, but I did add that little bit of mixed media down to that left-hand corner so that I could create a little bit of embellishing down in that area as well. Now I wanted to take this script stencil and I wanted to add a little bit of texture paste to my mixed media area. I didn't want to add too much, but just a tiny little bit, and just kind of like here and there. So I don't add like a whole solid section. You can just see that I'm just adding little bits and pieces here and there just to create a tiny little bit of texture. And I really love how this looks. I do this often on my mixed media layouts. I really, really love adding texture paste because it adds just a really cool effect, a really subtle bit of detail that really doesn't take much effort. It's super easy to do and it just takes a minute. And this particular stuff that I'm using dries very quickly. I will leave that in the list of materials that I used today in the description box below. Now I wanted to add a little more color to the top and bottom of my layout. I know you might really be holding your breath when you watch me tear this paper. It is really scary when you've got all that mixed media done and you've done all of that work with the journaling and everything on there, and then you decide that you're going to do something that is really final and permanent. I felt fairly confident that what I was doing was going to look nice. And I guess what I was thinking was, oh, well, I guess if it doesn't, I can just trim this off in a straight line and add it to another piece of white cardstock, and it really wouldn't be the end of the world. But I really wanted to add a strip of this plaid paper that has all of my color palette in it to the top and bottom of my layout. I just thought that would look really cool. And so I tore a strip off the top of my white and off the bottom of my white, and then I adhered a strip of this plaid paper in behind on both the top and bottom. So here you're going to see me just tearing a strip on the bottom. On the bottom, I didn't want to tear it all the way across because I have that mixed media in the one corner. So I only tear it just sort of like angling down towards that mixed media. I'm sorry that I'm working out of frame here. And I'm just going to show you there. Just going to rip that off, and then I will add that plaid paper to the top and bottom in that way. To make sure that I actually ended up with a 12 by 12 when I was finished, what I did was I put a piece of 12 by 12 paper behind my layout when I was working on gluing these pieces behind it, just to ensure that I actually ended up with 12 by 12 dimensions when I was finished, because, well, you know what, it's going to go in a 12 by 12 page protector, so it's important that the dimensions are accurate. So you can see here I'm just ruffling up, bending, folding that little rough edge at the bottom. I really like how that looks. I think it just makes it look kind of interesting and neat. And I am going to go ahead and glue that down soon. I just wanted to show you here, I actually ran this through my laminator before I adhered it down and started embellishing, and it really flattens it out. I have a Royal laminator. It works really, really well. I put a little piece of parchment paper on top, and just to protect the mixed media and to protect the rollers in my laminator. And I just roll it through there, and it just really flattens out that mixed media nicely. Now I also wanted to take a piece of that black Amy Tangerine floral paper and tuck it in a little bit in the top and bottom where I tore the paper, so that it is another area where that black and white paper is, not just on the side of the photograph. So it's really important, I feel, in designing a layout to make sure that you repeat certain elements, whether it's your colors or a certain texture or whatever, just so that things are all tied in together. And so I didn't want that paper to just be a one-off in that one area where the photo is, or in the photo layer. I wanted to add it in the top and bottom as well, just to kind of make everything coordinated and more cohesive for the layout. So I'm just going to lift those little edges up again on that black and white paper. Now I wanted to start to figure out what I wanted to put on here for other embellishments, and you'll just see to the right of my layout on my desktop, I've got a pile of embellishments. And what I did was I went through the Truly Grateful die cuts and some of the bits and pieces that I had fussy cut from the papers. And I made a little stack of things that I thought coordinated well with the colors and the layout that I have going here. And so what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm just going to kind of loosely place everything where I think I'm going to want it. And when I have everything where I think I want it, I'm going to actually take a photograph of it with my phone so that then when I go to glue things down, if anything gets moved, I can just refer back to my photo on my phone. And so I'm not actually going to glue these down on camera. I do this off camera just because it takes a little bit of time, and all I'm doing is adding glue and foam adhesive to the little bits to glue them down. But what I will say is, to create that layered effect, it's really important that as soon as you put something on top of something else, if you want the layers to look really cool, it's important to use some foam adhesive to layer them. And so in that way, it adds a little bit more dimension. It makes it just look more layered. And I'm just showing you here with my hands. I realize I need to move things over. I'm not going to cover up my journaling, don't worry. And I do push that bottom cluster on the photo there over to the right a little bit so that it doesn't cover up any of my journaling. Now I like how the clusters end up. I'm going to do that one on the top, and then your eye kind of gets drawn through the photograph and then diagonally through the journaling down to the bottom corner, so that it just kind of bumps your eye from the top to the top corner of the photo, to the bottom corner of the photo, through the journaling, and down to that left bottom corner where the other cluster is. It just really creates a good eye line for your eye looking at the whole project. And now what I'm doing is I just really love these little dots that are on this sticker sheet here. They kind of look like they are enamel dots, but they're kind of like acetate dots, I guess. And they're really cool little embellishments. So I wanted to keep them tight in with the different clusters, and I'm going to add a few here and there around my clusters on the layout in the colors that coordinate with the project. And I also wanted to, and you can see that I've already added the title Thankful, and that's also from the Truly Grateful collection, from the sticker sheet that has all of the phrases on it. And then I wanted to add some sequins. And so part of the collection, also another part, is a little embellishment pack that has like wood veneers and a little shaker packs with sequins. And so I'm just going to take my little picker tool here and from Silhouette, and I'm going to grab those little sequins, put some glue under them, and glue those down. Now I'm going to show you my finished layout, and if you stick around, there's also some still shots, a bunch of still shots of the layout. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Make sure you leave me a comment today, and thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, I would love to have you as a subby, and I hope to see you here another time. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.